There's a particular kind of emptiness that's hard to describe. Not sadness exactly. Not loneliness, even when you're alone. Just nothing. A hollow feeling in the middle of your chest that you can't trace back to anything. Nothing bad happened. You're fine. Everything is technically fine. And yet, you catch yourself going through the motions. You're at dinner with people you like, and you're watching yourself from slightly outside your own body, wondering why you don't feel more present, more connected, more something. Maybe you've always assumed that's just what being human feels like, that other people feel the same way and just don't talk about it. But what if it wasn't just your personality? What if it was something that happened, or more accurately, something that didn't happen when you were a child? Today we're talking about childhood emotional neglect, what it is, why it's almost impossible to recognize in yourself, and the 8 signs that quietly show up in adult life, including that emptiness you can't explain. Childhood emotional neglect, or CBUEN, was first named and defined by psychologist Dr. Jonice Webb in her research and her book Running on Empty, published in 2012. Here's how she describes it. CEN is not what happened to you. It's what didn't happen. It's not abuse. There's no dramatic event you can point to. No visible wound, which is exactly why it's so hard to identify and so easy to dismiss. CN happens when your parents, usually well-meaning, often loving in their own way, consistently failed to notice, respond to, or validate your emotional world. Not always, not on purpose, but enough and early enough that your developing brain drew a conclusion. Your feelings are not important. They are not welcome here. So you learned to deal with them the only way you could. You turned the volume down. You got on with it. You stopped bringing the messy, complicated interior stuff to the surface, because every time you did, the response was silence, discomfort, or being told to cheer up. And then you grew up, and the volume has been down ever since. Here are 8 signs that you might be carrying childhood emotional neglect, even if you've never had a name for it until now. Sign 1. You don't really know what you're feeling. Someone asks you how you feel, and you genuinely don't know. Not because you're avoiding the question, but because the answer isn't there. You can describe what happened. You can analyze the situation perfectly. But how you feel about it? That's a different thing entirely. Psychologists call this alexithymia, difficulty identifying and describing emotions. It's significantly more common in people with a history of emotional neglect. When no one reflected your emotions back to you as a child, when no one said, "You seem scared," or "That must have hurt," your brain never fully developed the vocabulary for your own inner life. Emotions became data you didn't know how to read. Sign 2. Asking for help feels unbearable. You will struggle alone for far longer than necessary before asking for help. And when you finally do ask, if you do, there's this particular shame that comes with it. Like you've exposed something you shouldn't have. Like you've made yourself too much. In homes where emotions weren't welcomed, needing things often went unanswered. Not cruelly, just quietly. You learned without anyone telling you that needs are inconvenient, that you should handle things yourself, that being self-sufficient was the safest way to be. As an adult, that belief sits in your body as a physical reluctance, a tightening in the chest when someone offers to help, a reflexive "I'm fine" before you've even thought about whether you are. Sign 3. You're excellent at taking care of others. You notice when people around you are struggling, often before they say anything. You're the person friends come to, the one who holds things together, who remembers the follow-up text, the birthday, the small thing someone mentioned 6 weeks ago. You're good at it. But here's the thing. Caring for others often came easier than being cared for because it was safer. When your emotional world wasn't met with much, you redirected that sensitivity outward. You became attuned to other people's feelings because reading the room kept things smooth,
What's it called?
and focusing on
It's called a
others
loco.
meant not
It's
having to
fried
sit with
plantain.
your own
A loco.
stuff,
Is it
which was
sweet or?
uncomfortable
It's
territory
both. It
anyway.
can be sweet
The
or
cost of that
salty.
is that you can feel profoundly alone, even when you're surrounded by people who love you, because you've never quite let them love you back. Sign 4. You feel fundamentally different from other people. Not weird exactly, not broken, just other. Like you're watching everyone else through glass. Like they got a manual for how to be a person in the world, and yours got lost somewhere. Other people seem to know how to just be together, without it taking effort. They seem to enjoy things more easily. They don't seem to be monitoring themselves the whole time, checking whether they're doing it right, whether they're too much or not enough. This is one of the quieter, lonelier signs of CEN, the persistent sense that you don't quite belong, that something's slightly off, without being able to say what. Dr. Webb calls it the background hum, this low-level sense of differentness that you can't shake and can't explain. Sign 5. You have a harsh inner critic. The voice in your head is not kind. When you make a mistake, even a small one, it's not met with gentle self-correction. It's met with something closer to contempt. Idiot. Why would you say that? You always do this. This inner critic often develops as a response to emotional neglect, specifically to the shame that builds when your emotions were consistently treated as too much, wrong, or unwelcome. Children are egocentric by nature. When something goes wrong, they assume it's their fault. When a parent doesn't respond to an emotion, a child doesn't think, "My parent doesn't know how to do this." They think, "Something is wrong with me." That belief, reinforced enough times, becomes the voice that follows you into adulthood. And because it sounds like your own voice, it's easy to mistake it for the truth. Sign 6. You feel guilty when you put yourself first. Setting a boundary feels like causing harm. Taking time for yourself feels selfish. Saying no, even when you're exhausted, even when it's the right call, comes with a wash of guilt that doesn't quite make rational sense. When your needs consistently went unmet or unacknowledged as a child, you didn't learn that your needs were valid. You learned that the way to keep peace, to stay connected, to stay safe, was to minimize yourself. Self-sacrifice started as an adaptive strategy. In adulthood, it becomes a default, so ingrained it feels like character. Sign 7. You self-soothe in ways that numb rather than nourish. The emptiness needs somewhere to go. So you fill it with food, with alcohol, with hours of scrolling, with work that keeps you too busy to feel anything for very long. Not because you're weak or undisciplined, because the feeling underneath is uncomfortable and unfamiliar, and you were never really taught what to do with it. CEN survivors often struggle more than average with what therapists call distress tolerance, the ability to sit with difficult feelings without immediately trying to escape them. Because the lesson absorbed in childhood was, emotions are to be managed, not experienced. When those feelings surface, the nervous system does what it learned to do. It looks for the off switch, sign 8, the emptiness itself. And then there's the one we started with, that hollow feeling, the numbness, the sense that you're going through life, slightly detached from it. Dr. Webb describes this as the emotional equivalent of being raised in a house where the heating never quite worked. Nothing dramatic, no disaster, just a persistent chill that you got so used to, you stopped noticing it was cold. The emptiness isn't a personality trait. It isn't proof that you're incapable of depth or feeling. It's the direct result of emotions being switched off, over and over, in the years when you were learning what emotions were for. The feelings didn't disappear. They went underground, and the emptiness is what sits in the space they left. Here's what matters. Childhood emotional neglect is not a life sentence. The brain remains far more changeable than we used to think, and the emotional skills you didn't learn in childhood can be learned now. A few places to start. Name what you feel, even badly. You don't have to be fluent in your emotions immediately. Start by noticing. There's something here. Is it tightness, heat, a heaviness? Don't try to label it perfectly. Just practice not ignoring it. Let someone help you. Just once. Just small. The act of receiving care and surviving it, and not being too much, starts to quietly reprogram the belief that needs are dangerous. You don't have to overhaul your relationship with vulnerability overnight. You just have to let it happen a little more often. Find a therapist who knows CEN specifically. This matters more than it sounds. Childhood emotional neglect is easy to overlook even in therapy. Because there's no dramatic event to process, clients often minimize it. Dr. Webb's website has a therapist directory specifically for CEN-informed practitioners. And be patient with yourself in a way no one modeled for you. That is genuinely the work. If something in this video landed for you, if you heard yourself in one or several of those signs, I want you to know that recognizing it is not a small thing. Emotional neglect is invisible almost by design. It leaves no obvious marks. It's easy to spend a lifetime explaining away the emptiness, the difficulty asking for help, the sense of not quite fitting, as though these are just the way you are. They're not. They're patterns, and patterns can be interrupted. If this helped, subscribe. There's a lot more coming. And if any of these signs resonated, tell me which one in the comments. See you in the next one.